it on head first with the skills that I will teach you at work and say, no! No! You will not control me. No! No! You will not take my soul. No! No! You will not win this game. I am the one who's in charge. I am the one who says yes, no, now, here.
Hey guys, welcome to Psychology of Spirituality. Saeed here, really excited for our video series, starting with today's video on spiritual bypassing. So to begin, let's illustrate a little story from the Holy Bible. In the book of John, there's a story about Jesus conversing with a woman drawing water from a well. It seems like she's occupying her time with the daily chores, and Jesus remarks on her involvement. He puts her on blast, her involvement with 5 unmarried men. She's not married herself. The woman is invited in that moment to reflect on her psychological and emotional self, the part of her that needs work. But instead, she asks a question related to a proper place of worship. Jesus says in response, God is a spirit, and that they worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. For those joining the channel for the first time, I researched the area of religion and spirituality and its role as a very prominent protective factor, especially amongst young people. There is a litany of research to suggest that individuals who are religious and or spiritual, and I'm linking some videos where I've talked about the differentiations between the two. You can have a religious and spiritual category, spiritual but not religious, a religious but not spiritual, and a neither spiritual nor religious. Religion and spirituality are correlated with better health, better emotional adjustment, reduced at-risk behaviors such as reduced alcohol usage, reduced risky sexual behaviors, reduced drug usage, as well as better quality of life.
It's one life to live, so live it the best you can. Native Americans. It's one life to live, so live it the best you can.
Somewhere there's a person who lost a mother, lost a son, lost a friend, lost a brother. Way back they had a fight.
But there are areas in which heightened religiosity, so not spirituality, but religiosity, may not be always conducive towards health, and I mean psychological health and social health, such as increased authoritarianism, distrust of outgroup members, and fundamentalism, an area that I will delve much deeper into future videos and which I've touched on briefly before. But as it relates to today, I want to zero in on spirituality after reading an article on Vice by Shayla Love. So in this article, Shayla talks about having to work on oneself forever, an unreachable goal peddled to us by institutions who want to sell us this idea that our best self is only a few more workshops, a few more self-help books, a few more startup small businesses away. I have written before and have a video produced before about this multi-million-dollar wellness/mindfulness industry and how it reduces these indigenous spiritual practices towards individualistic idealizations such as attaining happiness and calm with minimal efforts towards moral, ethical development and community action.
Your Holiness, you're an expert on love.
Yes, I am.
Why do you think Darren Roanoke threw away his marriage?
Well, in my book, I Know You Are, But What Am I? I explain that when love goes wrong, nothing goes right. Yes.
I read it. It's impressive.
It's nothing short of a masterpiece.
So do you think you can come back with us to Toronto in the team jet?
It's a date.
Is it now?
Wow.
But I wanted to zero deeper into 2 major areas which have substantial research behind them. This video will cover spiritual bypassing, a 2-part series, and our next one will delve into spiritual narcissism. So with that, let's get started. It's interesting being in this line of work because I get many questions from people, mostly young people, what's the best way to practice spirituality. You know, they're not sure which new mindfulness app to download, which new Eastern philosophy that they can quote on their social media. I always begin not with spirituality, but what's your immediate relationship like with your family members or those close to you? The question brings some puzzlement because spirituality is viewed as the self-actualization endeavor of becoming a you 2.0 with added features and a new interface. But at the heart of spirituality is our interpersonal lives. Just as Siddhartha Gautama meditated under the Bodhi tree and came back to help his community, how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advised Arjuna to fight for his duty to his kingdom and family instead of remaining idle or passive in the face of violence, or the Holy Prophet in the Islamic religion challenged the sociocultural aspects of the pre-Islamic community, such as female infanticide, before amassing a large following. I know many individuals, and I suffer from this as well, who practice 1-hour meditations, visit retreats, go to all these like far off, nice forest, scenic places, are involved in lots of non-profit efforts in Africa or elsewhere, but in a more prescient, immediate manner haven't taken the time to forgive their parents, mend grudges with their siblings, or have any deep tie to a local community which also needs help. So that kind of forms the backdrop of what spiritual bypassing is. We can use spirituality as another escapist vehicle towards not challenging those parts of ourselves which require stringent work, right? It's much easier to seclude yourself, for example, like Simba in Lion King, or Christopher McCandless, which I've talked about extensively in Into the Wild.
What if I were smiling and running into your arms? Would you see then what I see now?
It's easier to bypass the actual work that we need to do at an environmental level, at a financial level, at a family level, right? Than to just isolate ourselves and become more spiritual. So now I want to delve into research. This was a very interesting article as it looked at spirituality and mindfulness as predictors in a regression equation to understand how these idealized states, like, we all want to become more mindful, more spiritual, but in this case, how they can further predict depression and anxiety through alexithymia, which is emotional suppression, non-reactivity, which is sometimes what people are asked to engage in when they're practicing mindfulness or spirituality. For those more interested in research, a hierarchical regression model, which is what I'm doing for my dissertation as it relates to personality research, which I've talked about here, is a great way to account for the percentage or variance of how much one variable may impact the criterion or the outcome variable. In this case, entering each predictor and looking at the adjusted weight on depression and anxiety. You can see the table here. Certain aspects of mindfulness and alexithymia added to the R-square, and in total, each of the 8 predictors account for 29% of the variance in depression and 37% in anxiety. This means that, of course, there are many other factors at play which no one research study can account for. Family history, sleep hygiene, personality, which I've talked about at length in my 5-part series here. But as it pertains to this article, non-judgment, non-reactivity, along with emotional suppression, alexithymia, may not be conducive instruments to those suffering from depressive or anxious symptoms. They lead to spiritual bypassing.
Serenity now! Serenity now! What is that? Doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say, Serenity now!
So you're using Frank's relaxation method?
Jerry, the anger, it just melts right off. Serenity now. Serenity now.
Serenity now thing doesn't work. Just bottles up the anger and then eventually you blow.
What do you know? You were in the nut house.
What do you think put me there?
I heard they found a family in your freezer.
Serenity now, insanity later.
Which is interesting because most therapeutic models, right, such as CBT, do the opposite of what some mindful therapeutic or some mindfulness states are trying to induce. They use a more reactive model, right? People are asked to challenge the core tenets of their cognitive distortions, manipulate the behavioral patterns, or even change their environments, which requires at least some judgment, right? You can't be non-judgment if you have toxic relationships that are facilitating depressive symptoms in your life, right? There's a part of you that has to react and be judgmental towards those parts. This is important for us to contextualize because it suggests that our spiritual journeys, without people to hold us accountable and complement these deficits we may have, may lead to further chaos. And again, seriously, just having down-to-earth people in my life who are able to laugh with you and even criticize you, and I've talked about humor in this article right here, it's important in instantiating humility as part of our spiritual essence, right? That way you don't become this holier than thou, looking at other people down from your, from your seat up in heaven, right? You're able to laugh at yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
Cameron.
Hi, Cameron. I'm Patch.
I have a cold. Just a bit of a cold. Is my nose red? Oh, it is. It's red.
What's that? You don't know?
I don't either.
Let's find out.
Taxi! Try on you. It's working very well.
Bee kisses.
What is going on here?
As far as viable solutions, I also want to zero in on this research article that used motivational interviewing, which is a very popular therapeutic model with young people, which seeks to enhance intrinsic motivation and commitment towards change through 4 principles: fostering acceptance and empathy to evoke a positive climate, identifying cost and benefits of changing versus not changing, so using that climate to facilitate behavior. So supporting self-efficacy, or the ability for that person to determine which problem-solving strategy best applies to them, and embedding those behaviors into the core value of that person's philosophy. I also like that this is a case study, because I think case studies are really, underrated is not the term, but I think they're very instrumental. They demonstrate the subjective aspects of behavior and psychology, which large-scale studies cannot. I am placing the study in the description because it provides a great example of a therapeutic session in which a counselor challenges a person's values in an empathetic manner to help them further explore how they can reformulate the way that they're behaving for better psychological health. In this case, finding a different, more positive and accepting church community. So this is what the conversation that's listed out in this case study is about. And this is going to go into the next part of our series, where I will delve into spiritual narcissism, the risk factors associated with having a holier than thou attitude, and solutions which embed more humility and interconnectedness to assimilate our spiritual ego as part of a collective whole. But I am going to leave some resources in the description, also some inventories which people can utilize to understand what their spirituality looks like, because that's very important, getting a baseline, an understanding of what your own spiritual worldview is. As always, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode. It's going to be the first part of a multi-part series on the dark side of spirituality, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you.